Good afternoon, everyone. I was hearing the panel discussion, then followed by what Poini talked about, the sustainability piece of the incubation. In fact, my journey in the domain of innovation, entrepreneurship, incubation spans more than 25 years as of now. And after having moved to the new vertical of climate, energy, and sustainability, which has become really such a you can say important topic, because if you say my calendar till February is blocked, because every now and then so many events and every discourse this topic is being discussed. So having said that, and realizing the current scenario where we are actually speaking as of now, we are all aware 2015 was a defining year, because where all 195 countries, actually the UN took a stock of the current situation, and then 17 goals have been really chalked out as a universal call for action, which emphasizes on addressing the economic, political, and environmental challenges. So starting with the poverty, which is the number one, and ending with the partnerships at 17. And actually it really navigates one through the entire gamut of whether it's education, it's water, sanitation, it's clean access to clean energy, then smart cities, action for climate change, and peace, and everything all inclusive. And since now climate has become a burning topic, each year as a part of annual mega event, which is Conference of Parties, COP, all heads of 195 plus nations meet and take stock of the actions which are being taken by various governments to really tackle the pressing need of climate change. And the last COP, it was the first COP which I attended in Dubai, and the overall declaration said that we need to really triple the renewable energy capacity worldwide. Also, we need to really enhance the energy efficiency by double the rate of energy efficiency, and we need to create 6 times more the energy storage capacity. And for this to happen, total trillions of dollars are required, and where the money will come from. So what is the critical piece is the funding which is required to drive the major mega initiatives to tackle both the climate change adaptation as well as the mitigation strategies. Currently within the department, we are focusing on the entire landscape of adaptation as well as the mitigation. And adaptation, we are driving 2 national missions from the government side, and we have a presence in each states and UTs as a part of DSTS funded state climate change cells in all the states and UTs, which is primarily headed by an IFS officer, Indian Forest Service officer, with a team just like what we have in Incubator. And we give them funding just like what we give for ITBI program for 5 years. But they need to really network and collaborate with all the state government, state departments, and then prepare and build capacities and prepare for eventuality of any climate change, which because there are instances of extreme events happening across India, we are all witnessing. In fact, the overarching 1.5 degree temperature rise in 2023, and Delhi also had this summer, it actually crossed 50 degrees centigrade. And given the trilemma which we are facing, where we have to strike a critical balance, being a most populous nation of the world, as well as the 5th largest economy, aspiring to be the 3rd largest one in terms of trillions of dollars by 2027, our actually journey is going to be really very challenging for the trilemma. That is where we need to strike a balance between the economic growth, energy security, and environmental sustainability. So these are the overarching objectives where we have to really walk a very tight rope, whatever new actions we take, because it is being said given the target we have to be Viksit Bharat by 2047, to be energy secured by 2047, and to be net zero by 2070. And India is only 60, the construction, it is said that only currently 40% constructed if we are aspiring to be a developed nation. So the pace of construction is going to really pick up. We have the Gati Shakti scheme really to enable and iron out various bottlenecks in the infrastructure development. Various corridors are being built up as a showcase. So in terms, the whole of government of India is marching towards that direction, that we create best-in-class infrastructure, whether you talk of mobility, whether you talk of in terms of the climate resilient agriculture crops. So it actually the whole, it is a humongous task which is present before the country like us, which are such a diversified group in terms of east to west, north to south, and we are entrepreneur lab by itself. And given that call in last budget, our PM has already announced 1 lakh crores of innovation of fund. So we have to develop indigenous capabilities, drive innovations, and I see that incubators, I have doubt whether it's a 2,000 of incubators as of now, or there are thousands of numbers, I do not know. But if we really say, you can say which are, if we are really talking of the really impact making incubators, I see there the number could be somewhere around 400 or 500, which are really doing the real incubation piece or the service, if we really want to put them in the bracket of. So there are some incubators, incubator of incubators, then incubators, they are moderate in terms of age, in terms of the service portfolio, and some are emerging incubators, new kids on the block. So given that, and also corporate run accelerators and incubators, so we have very wide mix of incubators, and some of the institutions without waiting, which are progressive ones, they have initiated their own. Now next comes the piece of the deep tech incubation. I do not know whether all these have been touched in the previous sessions, because that's the next big thing which Government of India and in particular DST is also contemplating to be an active player in the deep tech startup ecosystem. So what it is typical characterized by the long gestation period, more funding requirement, and really in terms of scaling is difficult, because you are translating an IP driven product into a useful commercially viable product in the market. And given the push of government to be indigenous, to be Atmanirbhar, to really look for where India is getting products imported, we need to manufacture right in India. So what are those conditions, what are those enablers we collectively could drive to position India? And thanks, it's a moment of pride and celebration, because right from 2015 we have seen a constant rise in the global innovation index. So we are currently 39th position out of 133 economies, and in terms of Asian developing economies, we hold a very important place. So given that kind of scenario, we see we have right attributes in the place, whether it's our demographic dividend, given the political will we have, and given the the critical mass of incubator professionals, progressive institutes we have created thanks to Startup India program. So given that kind of scenario, what really is challenging, I think many aspects have already been deliberated upon in terms of how to make incubators sustainable, because incubators cannot be lifelong, be dependent on government funding. They really need to create a mark, and they need to create their own unique model depending upon the relevant area they are focusing on, the domain they are targeting, and the kind of pipeline they are generating and addressing. So these attributes may vary from incubator to incubator, but obviously everyone should try to be the next best version of themselves wherever they are as of now. So that will be my message. And in the just final thoughts on DST is currently driving from India a mission innovation, which was also carved out during the same time as UN SDGs in the year 2015 as a part of COP21 in Paris, where PM only coined this term mission innovation, and it constitutes a group of 23 countries and European Commission. So why 23 countries? Because they actually contribute to the 80% of global GHG emissions. So if they are contributing to these, which in turn is a key, you can say, attribute for the climate change, man-made climate change. So therefore, voluntarily, these countries should come out with mechanisms, programs, policies, and bigger chunk of R&D funding to catalyze innovations in clean energy domain. So that's why we are part of the founding member of this mission innovation. And recently I have attended the mission innovation ministerial, which was held in Foz do Iguaçu in Brazil, alongside with the G20 energy ministerial. And Brazil is a proponent of biofuel in terms of bioethanol, flex fuel. So they are earlier sugarcane based, now they have switching over to the corn based ethanol, and they are also part of the Global Biofuel Alliance. As a part of G20, India has announced. So as we move forward, 2030 is the goalpost which our PM has already carved out in terms, which call it Panchamrit. To be, we need to up the renewable energy capacity by 500 gigawatt installed capacity. 50% of our energy generation should be through non-fossil fuels. We should be able to really mitigate 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions from our environment, and we should be able to cut down the carbon emissions by 40%, 45% of our GDP at 2005 level, and the overarching how to be attaining net zero by 2070. So these are the missions which we all collectively, there are 12 odd departments, we are working in this direction for decarbonizing India. And for Indian scenario, it is going to be development led, sustainable and inclusive net zero transition. And there are recently I am Ahmedabad, Professor Amit Gar has come out with a study which was done at the behest of Office of PSAs. So they have come out with 7 different scenarios where India could attain net zero, and it has come out clearly despite all other aspects which we are trying, whether it's carbon capture and utilization in hard to abate sectors like cement, steel, oil and gas, fertilizers, or even agriculture contributes to carbon GHG emissions. Then we have transport sector, we have building energy sector, construction sector also contributing to carbon emissions. And it is being said that we need to really go nuclear way. So nuclear, we need to add on nuclear energy capacity if we are targeting to be net zero. Since we are coal dependent as of now heavily, so that's why we are, our target is at the last 2070. Rest other countries have announced target as 2050, or some who are dependent 20, like Russia is 2060. Rest all Europe has announced. Now they have actually are enforcing stringent emission norms. You have to the standards. So when we talk of all these decarbonization in terms of SDGs, we have to really comply with these strong standards and safety norms. Hydrogen is the now next big thing, which is green hydrogen. India is actually at par with all global counterparts in propelling the green hydrogen, which is at the infancy stage in the country. EV also, we need to have 30% of EV by 2030. So what is the roadmap? We have released white paper on EV, and under a new entity ANRF of DST, Anusandhan National Research Foundation, where our SCRB has been subsumed. First mission to be launched is Maha EV. It is for EV research. So anyone who is interested to apply under Maha EV call, they can really. So I think whether it's and all corporates are now being governed by ESG, environmental sustainability and governance. So that has become really critical. So cutting across the entire domain of when we have the theme of incubators for impact, how do you define impact? That should be really, whether it's impact in terms of economic impact, whether it's in terms of the, you can say, environmental impact. So what are those impacts? Some of the, not only the master classes, but which acts as a holy book for all incubators to follow. How do we really create the requisite impact wherever they are working on whatever domain, and can we have an incubator, as Mr. Mittal, when we had gone to Israel and seen the way it is like a sort of a factory. You feed ideation, innovation at one side at input level, and at the output within a definitive span of time you get a finished and you really like ready to commercialize product. So can we envisage this? Is it possible? And that too happening in say a span of 2 to 3 years, depending on the domain. All deep tech will require definitely more time frame to the typical period could be 5 years, and the services, the typical ICT could be 2 to 3 years. So creating an impact in a shortest span should be the motive. And now let me initiate the and see the collective experience and wisdom of our panelists. How do they go about in creating and sharing their thoughts on creating incubation for impact? Start with Mr. Jeev Krishna Gopal, who is the CEO of EIC, Access Livelihood. So first questions, you have been working in the intersection of livelihoods and entrepreneurship for many years. How do you see incubators contributing to the SDG number 1, which is for the poverty alleviation, economics, environmental, through sustainable innovation in grassroots communities? So please share your thoughts, and I think it's a 3-minute, you could restrict your response.
I will just give 3 or 4 examples on how incubators can contribute to impact, and they can do it very significantly. So first thing, I think, as you mentioned, madam, we need to realign the metrics by which we are measuring incubators' success. So it's not just going to be about sustainability in terms of financials, but also what is the kind of key impact that we can drive onto people and planet. That has to be measured simultaneously. So the impact metrics for the incubators have to be redefined. Once we redefine, I think there is a lot of process variations that we have to bring in. One of the example is, like, for example, if we are interested in creating wealth for weavers, which is a key impact in this way, innovation can be driven not in lab, but we would require designers from NID, NIFT to actually co-create designs with the weavers at the grassroots level. They do have a lot of traditional wisdom, and this wisdom has to be combined with whatever scientific know-how that is developing, and that's where the innovation can be co-created. So one of the examples is that we had a designer from NID who worked with the weavers in East Godavari district, and what we have done is we have imagined a garment and then pictured what should be how the fabric should be woven. So it's basically re-engineering the entire fabric design using the end output as this one. And this was developed by an NID designer who sat with around 20 master weavers whom we have and developed this design. So this is a kind of innovation that has to be done. We can't do it only in the lab if we really are interested in creating an impact. So that's one example. Second example, when we raise capital, as an incubator, we have raised around more than 200 crores in the last 10-15 years. So when we raise capital, capital has to be a portfolio. It can't be just all capital is short-term impatient. We need to have a portfolio where we have patient capital and blended finance. Now, blended finance is critical because a lot of these innovations require gestation and grant support is required at that particular. And when you say grant support is required, so you need to have a hybrid architecture. So you have to have a not-for-profit arm which works with the grants and a for-profit arm which works with the equity resources. And if you are able to combine this, then we can drive innovation in the grassroots and create an impact. The third thing that I would like to say is, a lot of our innovation, we focus only on product innovation, but there is a lot to be done in the process innovation as well as enterprise design level innovation. Now, one of the key factors that we have figured out, and this is with around 12,000 women in a dairy, and Srini was also looking at that dairy. The dairy, actually, what does it do? It is actually way back in around 10, 15 years itself, it has imagined that the way forward in marketing is direct to customer, which is what we are looking at in quick commerce or anywhere. So we are now encouraging something called as P2C as supply chain model, which is producer to consumer as a supply chain model, instead of just looking at B2B and B2C, which is the traditional models that we are trying to see. In that way, the value realizations for the communities will be higher and margins also will be higher, which can plow back into the incubator's own well-being. So another thing that we have figured out is that India is a land of lot of GI, I think geographical indicators. That itself is a wealth which can be converted into exportable products and services, and it can generate wealth for the community as well as for this one. So, and this is again, like we work with handloom weavers, we have ICAT. India owns almost 95% of all handloom techniques. And as we look at sustainable clothing as a solution, handlooms is a very integral part of that, and that can be converted into exportable products and create a lot of wealth. So I think there is a lot more, and I think fundamentally there has to be a shift that when we work with communities or on climate change poverty issues, we should not see them as have-nots, but the moment we see them as haves, that they are already producing something and they also have local knowledge, local culture. All of these have wonderful ideas which can be picked up and converted into good business solutions which can generate a lot of wealth for both the communities as well as for the investors. And in that way, the incubators can contribute a lot to the entire game. So it's a very sustainable way to contribute it.
In terms of addressing the climate change and environmental challenges, particularly in these sectors like renewable energy and smart cities.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. 2 years back, we realized at T-Hub that we have been extensively incubating a lot of tech companies, and we also realized that tech is good for the future, but at the same time, the sustainability of the planet is also equal responsibility. So from that, we realized and we thought like we'll initiate a program where we can really support a lot of green initiatives. And we started this program called Sparkle, where we wanted to incubate, one of the top creamy companies in the climate tech, waste management and recycling areas. And we are incubating them and helping them grow as quickly as possible so that they can contribute to the climate change and also the environmental, damage that is happening across the planet. Few companies, are really doing good. We have companies in the areas of biofuels, recycling, hydrogen adoption, and hydrogen fuel cells, and a lot of companies on carbon credits, carbon monitoring, and founders who are building sustainable tiles, sustainable material for construction. So there is an amazing talent coming, who are really passionate about solving climate tech and environmental problems. And all they need is some wisdom and a little capital so that they can, rise up and contribute to the cause at a big time. What we are doing is we are trying to create an ecosystem where we can bring in lot of, sustainability or impact investors, along with a lot of mentors from various research bodies, even academia and also corporates to support these initiatives. Lot of corporates like DBS Bank, Mercedes-Benz, Renault, a lot of them are now coming up and creating funds, which are worth 20 to 30 lakhs, which can be utilized by these, climate tech warriors. and they can build their products and also get into the market. So there is a huge push coming through incubation, and we understand that we have to contribute to the sustainability of the planet. And so far we incubated around 65 companies solving various problem statements, and going forward we wanted to increase this number so that there can be more ideas and more innovations that can be supported and grown, especially in the climate tech and the and also the environment industry. Thank you.
Harshan, who represents Social Alpha, let me just inform, under Mission Innovation, first international, you can say, clean tech incubator has been supported to Social Alpha. So, and that was the first one, and we have an Accelerate module to support clean tech startups under Mission Innovation. So your question is, with your focus on social enterprises and impact investing, what are some of the most significant challenges in startups startup need to balance? Is it between the profitability and impact when you're aligning with the SDG targets like reducing inequality or promoting responsible consumption?
Thank you, ma'am, for the question, and thanks to ISBA for inviting us here. I'm representing Social Alpha, and I would also want to thank Dr. Anita Gupta. She mentioned about Mission Innovation. She has been a great supporter of Social Alpha, and we were fortunate to set up the first clean tech incubator under the Mission Innovation program. Now, coming to Social Alpha, I think we have always been focusing on creating a lab to market to communities model for innovations and startups that are trying to address the larger problems facing our planet, right? Which is whether it is poverty, whether it is climate change, whether it is access to healthcare. And we wanted to create an ecosystem that can support the entire transition of these startups from an idea stage to a stage where they're actually deployed at a community level and the impact is seen on the ground. And we do it through three strategic verticals that we have. One addresses climate specifically, the other one addresses healthcare, the third one addresses livelihoods. And we also understand these are all interlinked issues, right? So when you talk about climate change, the impact of climate change is felt across some of these sectors. So it's a nexus of all these entities that come together and need to be addressed together. From that standpoint, and that also means that most of the startups that we have supported, so far we have supported more than 300 startups. We have invested in more than close to 100 of them, equity investments, and we have made a few exits also on the way. But most of the startups actually fall in the category where they have to actually find a way to balance. They are a for-profit entity, but then they are addressing problems that are not really being like consumed by the traditional businesses that we see, which means there is a dichotomy that exists in terms of the origin of those innovations and where the end users of those innovations. So in terms of the challenges, broad three challenges that I could like talk about, which would cover span of all of these, right? And the first one is incidentally the technology challenge itself. So when you're trying to solve problems of energy transition, when we need sustainable energy transition, we are looking at technologies that can achieve the energy transition at a cost, at a price point, at a level of accessibility that is accessible to anyone. And which means I think the existing technologies might not be able to address it, which means that new technologies need to be created. These are technologies that come from the lab. These are deep technologies that will require immense amount of investments to actually start up in itself. So which means I think the first technology challenge is the most prominent one we see. And this spans across areas, whether it is energy storage, alternative battery chemistries, whether it is alternatives to plastic, new materials that can actually replace plastic, because that's a huge problem, right? But what we see today in terms of the market is either there are solutions that are way expensive than what normal people could afford, or there are solutions that doesn't have the same physical characteristics of what they are sought to replace. So if you have to replace plastic, you have to have the same physical characteristics that need to address the problem. So the technology challenge is the biggest one as far as we see it, and we really welcome initiatives that are looking at deep technologies at the larger level to see how we can solve some of these challenges. The other one is obviously the business scaling challenge in itself, because the end users of many of these technologies are actually people who will not be able to pay for it directly. So how do you find a business model that that meets the needs of these users, but also enables that whatever external support that can come into the ecosystem, whether it's through government schemes, whether it's to other programs, can come into those startups so that they can actually go and deploy and test the solutions. And they also get an opportunity to understand what the customer really needs. Because that is also a key challenge that we need to face. And the third and final one is obviously, and I can see that they would want me to conclude, so I'll just conclude with the third point, which is the most common, which is a funding challenge. And it is not that funding is not available from government, but I think the funding is insufficient. And we always expect the venture capitalists to come and fund some of these things, but it will not happen, right? Because they have no thesis to support such a huge risk. So that is where I think we have been big advocates of philanthropy and other entities to come in and support and de-risk some of these innovations at the early stage, so that once they get into a stage where they can scale, the mainstream VCs can come and the entities like incubators can actually have a huge role in facilitating that. But with that, I think I will conclude.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.